Why go out when home has everything? Well, almost everything. This was the one room we prayed no guest would ever see. We inhaled paint fumes, argued over 3 inches, and questioned this entire marriage. And somehow, two completely delusional beginners turned it into this. All because we got tired of driving 30 minutes for dog grooming. Turns out, when you build a life you love at home, living starts to feel unnecessary. Our dream lake house came with one tiny problem: mold, and a smell we don't talk about. And just like that, our washer and dryer didn't fit. So for 6 months, they lived in the garage, which meant we were stuck using the previous owner's machines, moldy, loud, dramatic. But if you know me, you know I'm a little delusional, because we're not just fixing rooms, we're building a home we never need a vacation from. That was the moment confidence quietly replaced common sense. I made a Pinterest board, which in my mind made me fully qualified. I remember thinking, how hard could this be? Tony just looked at me and said, "You learned nothing from the last project."
Oh my god, this is crazy.
I ignore him. We practically moved into Lowe's. I wanted to grab wood and go. Tony inspected every board like it belonged in a museum. To save money, we made what felt like responsible decisions. They weren't. We debated every color, like people who had no idea what they were doing. Personal growth. I didn't wear sunglasses indoors this time. Eventually, the garage filled up with materials, which meant there was only one thing left to do: start. We thought the hard part was about to begin. It wasn't. Step 1. Remove the hideous drying rack. Turns out, my arms are aggressively short, so Tony handled it. We bought a taller ladder and suddenly felt extremely professional. Next mistake, thinking we could move the machines ourselves. 2 minutes in, I hurt my back. So my mother-in-law showed up as a Korean daughter-in-law. Watching her do manual labor felt like illegal. But she's terrifyingly strong. Big plan number 1. Build a mudroom wall with hooks for guests. Simple, until we realized nothing lined up, the boards were off by exactly 1 millimeter. Tony was thrilled, because this meant he could finally use the planner he bought 3 years ago and never opened. So we dragged everything to the shed in the snow. For some reason, the shed is very far away. We used the planner for the first time. Wood chips flew everywhere, like aggressive winter. At this point, quitting felt reasonable. It was freezing, and every board still needed tiny adjustments to fit the wall. Back and forth, over and over again. Turns out, building a life you never want to live is slightly uncomfortable. Vacation-free living is surprisingly labor-intensive. And somehow, this was still the easy part. Back inside, Tony brought out the laser level, because close enough is not in his vocabulary. Most boards hit studs. The ones that didn't, liquid nails. Then the nail gun, zigzag pattern.
Across to like.
Why you're doing that?
I didn't want to hit. I didn't want to smash that. I need like a block that I can.
It looks easy on camera. Getting here took days, way more days than we expected. Then came filling nail holes and caulking, my specialty. Tony was at work. Someone has to fund this home resort. So I caulked until dinner, line after line after line. This took longer than I thought. Another delusional moment. But honestly, I was proud of myself. Naturally, I didn't stop there. Since we were repainting anyway, I decided to remove all the cabinet doors. Armed with a drill and a ladder, I struggled a lot. For a brief moment, I felt like one of those famous DIY women online. Reality check, my hands were shaking. Then I had another thought. How hard could sanding be? I put on an old college t-shirt and started sanding the cabinet doors. 5 doors in, I quit. There was absolutely no way I was sanding all of them. And somehow, the DIY gods didn't abandon me. YouTube University delivered. Zinzerbin Shellac Primer. No sanding required. Eureka!
Hey, we don't need no cat hairs.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
This stuff sticks to everything. Tile, laminate, plastic. The smell? Aggressive. At this point, we were too deep to quit. It was freezing outside, so we built a paint booth on our basement pool table. Not difficult, just relentlessly tedious. At this point, I already hated paint.
Kirby. Helping?
And we hadn't even touched the walls. So painting the laundry room, I handled the prep. Tony handled most of the painting. Ceiling first, then walls, then trim. Same color, different sheen. Apparently, that's the correct way, according to YouTube. And this is where our biggest mistake happened. No proper masks in a tiny room with very serious fumes. No one talks about this part of building a life you don't need to escape from. 2-day headache, immediate regret. Learn from us, wear a respirator. But still, I take the headache over sanding every cabinet door. Because once the paint went on, wow, it actually looked good. Naturally, my mistakes weren't finished. Paint math. Tony said, buy a gallon. I said, a quart is enough. It was not enough. Back to Lowe's, then I bought the wrong sheen. Back to Lowe's again, I spent more money trying to save money. Lesson learned, sometimes listen to your husband. Oh, and one more thing, remove all pet hair before painting, unless you're going for a custom fur textured finish. The painting was finally done, which meant it was time for the pretty part, gold hooks. I found the perfect brass ones and was fully prepared to eyeball the placement and call it a day. And then Tony brought out the laser level again. He believes in absolute mathematical precision. I believe in vibes.
We can just eyeball it?
Oh my God. Jesus Christ.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
What?
Jesus Christ.
Cuz
what?
you don't know me?
One hook took 35 minutes. We were dangerously close to our first renovation fight.
Can we just not use
No! Hey! I'm gonna go YouTube then.
Don't be there. Okay, I'm sorry.
So I made a mature decision and left the room for peace preservation.
Getting me?
No.
Wow, look at this. So pretty. Good job.
Only 9 hooks to go. Good luck, baby. With the hook still in progress, we moved on to the sink cabinet. It needed a small modification to fit the old pipes. And during assembly, something important snapped. Panic. Tony disappeared into the shed again and came back with the solution. a metal bracket. Is it the prettiest fix hidden inside the cabinet? No. But is it solid? Like, really solid. Crisis handled. With the cabinet ready, it was finally time to bring the machines home. After 6 months in the garage, their exile was over. My back was still questionable, so my mother-in-law stepped in again, the real MVP. We slid them into place, and just like that, the room started to feel like a home. Of course, nothing is ever simple. The mover's tape residue refused to come off. I scraped, I peeled, I tried. Why is everything a struggle? And then I made a very mature decision. This was a future Haley problem, so we moved on. Next up, the sink. Tony cut the laminate countertop to size and we dropped in a deep basin. Not just any sink, the future dog spa. Because once this was done, I never wanted to bend over a bathtub again, ever. Plumbing was intimidating, but with a little help from YouTube and some very confident decision making, Tony connected everything. I thought it looked perfect. Tony strongly disagreed. Apparently, professionals would have opinions, which raised one very important question. Did it leak? Or did it not leak? One last eyesore remained. This awkward plastic half wall hiding all the plumbing. Removing it would mean seriously drywall work. Hard pass. So we did what all confident beginners do. We improvised. We primed it, painted the top to match the cabinets, and wrapped the front in peel and stick tile. My first time using it, and I was slightly terrified, but it was surprisingly manageable. I even did the backsplash completely on my own. No Tony. Personal victory. And just like that, it stopped looking like a problem. It looked intentional, like it had always been part of the design. Once everything dried, it was time to reinstall the cabinet doors. By we, I meant Tony, because my arms don't reach. I was on assistant duty. Somehow, despite saving every screw, one disappeared. Naturally, I had a brilliant idea. Steal one from the cabinet we removed earlier.
I tried to save everything. See? Good job.
Problem solved. Next up, hardware. Upper cabinet handles went on first, smooth, efficient, encouraging. And then, the sink cabinet handles. Another incident. The drilling guide was somewhere. Tony went looking.
Ow! Fuck! Oh shit!
Did you cut?
Oh boy! Boy!
Oh no!
There was blood. A bandage was applied.
Yeah, you're bleeding.
Yeah, I'm holding it.
You gotta have a sit. You're really gonna go to shed while you're bleeding?
Yeah, I'm holding it. I gotta wait for the blood to clot anyways, right?
I guess I could ask you what to do. I can't ask you how to do.
Lesson learned. Safety is not optional. Wear gloves, use the right tools, don't rush. And still, he ran back to the shed like this was completely normal. Found the tool. Came back.
Found it?
Yeah, of course I found it. Always find it. I know where everything is. It's just in different places.
It was in the shed?
Yeah.
Let me see.
This one's for the side one, this one's for the drawers, but I just brought both of them.
Alrighty.
Installed the handles. Was it worth it? I told him to just eyeball it. That was never an option. Finally, the jewelry. We tied everything together in gold, cabinet handles, the faucet, a matching tower bar, even a retractable clothesline.
Nice. And you gotta lock it.
How do you do that?
Turn to the right or left. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Remember that tape gunk on the washer and dryer? I actually found a weird solution.
This expired sunscreen, so I'm gonna try.
Apparently, sunscreen breaks it down. So I grabbed an expired bottle, let it sit, and wiped. Gone. And then, the highlight of the entire project, the wooden countertop. I went back and forth on this for a long time, but the moment it went in, the whole room shifted. It felt solid, grounded, built to last. One of those choices you're grateful for every single day. 4 weeks later, it was finally time. We ran the laundry. Tony and I just stood there watching it like proud parents. It's working. It's actually working. And then, oh no, a drip. Not dramatic, but steady. Right under the sink. The exact connection Tony warned about. Turns out, professionals might have left. Towels came out, panic stayed calm. No one talks about this part of building a life you don't need to escape from. Tony went back under, tightened everything, retaped the connection, and rebuilt it properly. We tried again. No leak, high five. We actually did it. Before the reveal, we had one very important test. The dog spa.
What do you think, Oreo? Sit. It's okay, sit. It's very warm here.
Oreo had absolutely no idea what we built for her. And honestly, she was not impressed. But the deep sink worked beautifully. Strong pressure, easy cleanup, no more bending over the bathtub. Oreo may not appreciate this room yet, but we do. And eventually, she'll come around. This is what it takes to build a life that feels better than living. And here it is. From a dark, forgotten closet to a bright, multi-purpose space. A dog wash station, a mudroom wall for guests, and a room that finally feels like it belongs in this home. We used to hide this door, now we leave it open. Because we're building a home we never need a vacation from. Even if the paint fumes almost took us out. So, why go out when home has everything? Leave me alone, don't stay away too long.